Okay, this video might ruffle some feathers. Yes, if you have a dream to make your own Star Wars project, then 100% do it. We all love Star Wars, and if you want to express that love by buying a Lego set, an action figure, making fanfics, or starting a YouTube channel, what a crazy concept, then by all means do it. Except fanfics. Don't make fanfics. You're weird. But just because you make something out of love doesn't mean that it's good. Now, one more bit of backtracking. Are there good Star Wars fan films? Yes, absolutely. But there's a massive caveat to like 99% of these fan films that most of us would consider good. I'm done with the backtracking. The obvious reason why most of these fan films are bad is because of budgeting. Most people have a very, very small budget when they're making fan films. So it's mostly a group of fans chilling or trying their best to reenact a character or doing their own original character. Now, with all due respect, 99% of them are not doing a good job. They're not actors or actresses, and it's hard to do anything with mostly just a green screen behind them, which is honestly a test to what the actual Star Wars prequel actors are doing, acting in front of a green screen and like pretending they're in an actual environment. That's real shout out to them. More on the budget, I would say most of them are about $5,000, maybe $10,000. With most people doing these fan films, I imagine it's hard to delegate where the budget goes between costumes, location, and scripts. One set of File First approved armor can set you around $2,000. So if you got the File First to actually help you themselves to do props and everything, it'll still cost a lot, with the chances of Disney still shutting you down. And let's say you even do have a massive fan film with a lot of money, most of the time it still doesn't mean you're doing a good job or the fan film is very good, like we see with the Star Wars Theory fan film. Just because it's expensive doesn't stop Palpatine from looking like this and Padme from looking like this. Also, there's a massive chance of Disney shutting you down. As well, if Disney doesn't shut you down, you probably will not make a lot of money or money at all. Just like how Disney IP's done, like with the Star Wars Theory fan film, he did not make a single dime off of that, even though it has like 11 million views. Unless you make something so amazing that either people subscribe to you or you're lucky enough to actually get monetized on that video. Unless you have a bigger channel so you can get your name out there easily, you probably still won't make $1,000 back on it. That's just the reality of the situation with fan films. That's why a lot of these fan films are set in the forests. That's because it's easy and free scenery that can be any Star Wars planet with the jungle, but you're also really limited in the story you can tell because you're either stuck in a forest or you're stuck in a desert. Which is a great time to bring up the story of most of these fan films. They are in many ways bad to tremendously and mind-boggling stupid. But before we go on the many reasons why I think a lot of these are bad, I just want to first highlight two things. First, acknowledge how much these Star Wars video game short film trailers affect people's perception of Star Wars. And on that point, the Star Wars Squadron short film that was officially released by Disney and EA. This is what, in my opinion, a fan film should strive for narrative reasons and also visually, which few have tried and even less have succeeded in. One that has actually did this before the Star Wars Squadron's short film was released, and that is this TIE Fighter fan film. They both accomplished it of telling a great narrative and story with using minimum dialogue to no dialogue whatsoever. See, in my humble opinion, just because the story has a lot of dialogue in it doesn't mean it's good. I'm gonna get some criticism for this point because of how the world's perception of the prequels has changed, but I think we can all agree that most of these people making the fan films have grew up on the prequels. They're in their 20s to mid-20s. And what is the number one criticism of the Star Wars prequel trilogy? The confusing dialogue and somewhat convoluted story. But because of how mostly these people change their perception of the prequel trilogy, they take a lot of those story beats and idiosyncrasies of these movies and they put it in their mind and eventually put it into their Star Wars projects like their Star Wars fan films. But a lot of times the prequels, I say we can admit, struggle a lot with the dialogue and try to tell the story that they want to tell because their dialogue is abysmal. But at least there's a solid foundation of where they're going with things. But the foundation of these fan films crumble terribly because of the dialogue, and the story, the foundational story was not good enough. The dialogue just can't really explain what's happening. It's just mostly expository dialogue trying to explain what's happening because visually they cannot get it down perfectly because, again, it's just a green screen behind them. So it just crumbles down almost as soon as you start it. Usually the story isn't good enough, so they compensate with lackluster story by throwing in a bunch of fan service, which makes sense because well, they're fans and the job of the Lucasfilm Story Group is to make fans have these reactions like, oh my god, Cad Bane is in the Bad Batch? Like, that's the point of having fan service and everything. But besides Dave Filoni, there's a filter to it most of the time. But there's no real filter whatsoever. Take, for example, right here.
Remember the Shadowlands on Kashyyyk?
You mean Guerrera? Yeah. He's hard to forget.
Now, what they could have said to put a more filter to it and make it more tasteful is saying that you fought with the Caravan Angels. That is the more correct way of saying it. You for the partisans to make it a bit more tasteful and to add more of a filter to it. But if you just had to say that you fought with Saw Gerrera, just say that you fought with Saw Gerrera. But there's levels to it, like I mentioned. So when you say you fought with Saw Gerrera partisans at Kashyyyk, that is you trying to say wink wink nudge nudge Jedi Fallen Order. I know you played it. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Fan service to the max. Isn't that an amazing Easter egg? Blah, 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 blah. No, it's not. Again, filters. There's levels to it. There's Easter eggs. There's fan service. And there's just pointing out the obvious just so you can get a reaction. This is a consistent thing throughout most fan films because since they're in a location that's not really Star Wars-y, they have to remind you that you're in Star Wars. Let's go back to what I said about the effects of video game trailers had on fans in general. I didn't forget about the Old Republic. This had one of the biggest impacts on Star Wars fans, period. They understand how to make an impactful story without using a ton of dialogue to explain what's happening. But most importantly, there are memorable lightsaber duels. This perfects what, in my opinion, George Lucas was trying to do with the fights in the prequel trilogies, but it does it with way more success. Unfortunately, the side effect of this success is that most fan films just dissolve into, like, trying to be a light version of this. It just basically is, you dishonored the Jedi Order, the guy saying, no, what I did was perfectly acceptable, blah, 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 blah. And then massive, sloppy, to be honest, light show in the forest. And again, they don't have a big budget actors or a great story in the first place to make it anything more than a cool battle. That's the difference between this and this. One is more emotional and beautiful and like cinematography is perfect. You understand the story and everything. The other one is just, meh, that's a cool lightsaber battle, I guess. What sets apart a fan film from a basically overglorified VHX test? Well, first I want to separate fan recreations from fan films. Then I can take it more easily. I would say most fan creations actually are really good because they don't overstep their boundaries. Most of these films are done in Unreal Engine or digitally recreated in some other software or redone in Battlefront 2. That is perfect because you're not limited to the budget of creating sets or costumes or everything like that. But most importantly, you can actually recreate the person/character space without relying on an actor. But more commonly in fan films, it's literally just a fan trying their best to look similar to the character they're portraying. This guy does not look like Samuel Jackson in the slightest, not even a young version of Samuel Jackson. That's just not a problem with fan films, but also official Star Wars material. Take, for example, Ahsoka's interpretation in The Mandalorian as well as Luke Skywalker. They do not look similar whatsoever to what they're trying to portray in other media. Like, this does not look like Luke Skywalker from Return of the Jedi, and this does not look like Ahsoka from Star Wars Rebels. And even if you try to get different actors like they did with Luke to get Sebastian Stan, it would still look off. It would be, like I said, that they hired someone to look similar to the actors they're trying to portray. They'll never truly capture what they're trying to do. That's what makes what Unreal captures, Cinematic captures, and a few others do amazing, because what they're doing is taking assets or making their own that looks close or exactly like their counterparts. Like, take for example this Ahsoka. This looks a lot closer to what Ahsoka looks like, or how fans interpret what a realistic Ahsoka would look like based off what the Clone Wars gives you. Or how Cinematic Captures did this Ahsoka's decision using Battlefront 2's assets for Obi-Wan Kenobi that looks exactly like Obi-Wan Kenobi. I know this is a way oversimplification, but with all due respect to Jamie, this Obi-Wan looked 10 times better than what Jamie could ever do. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. This is no slight against him, but a digitally recreated Ewan McGregor will look better than this fan trying his best to look something close to Ewan McGregor. The same is true with fan films. If you just have to do a known character from Star Wars, do it digitally. It's just better in almost every way. The only thing you have to really consider yourself is just voice acting. Take, for example, this Star Wars Rebels fan film. This isn't Ezra Bridger. This is that guy who runs the Star Wars channel that talks about Mighty Zero and vapes. This isn't Kanan Jarrus. This is the guy who works in the lumber department at Home Depot. That isn't Sabine. That's a girl you picked up from Spencer's. Like, come on, it just doesn't look like Sabine. But in my opinion, you don't need to use, or really shouldn't use, known characters unless you absolutely positively want to. Look, I love these Star Wars people. I love the story of Star Wars. I love these characters. And while sometimes I feel like I can do better than some of the storyboard members and the people who actually work on Star Wars in general, I realize that I and like 70% of the population have no idea what to do with these characters and stories, etc. I mean, look at the first 2 episodes Star Wars Theory wrote of If I Wrote The Last Jedi. Well, it's so bad it's literally funny. I'm all for fan creations, but the reality is that we have no idea what we're doing. Instead, it's better to do your own characters like this TIE Fighter fan film. There is no characters, but we still feel the effects at each time someone we see on screen dies. You can have complete control of what happens to the character you're trying to portray. That doesn't really have an immense effect of Star Wars, so you can easily say, yeah, this fan film is a part of my canon without it actually trying to destroy something that's really officially Star Wars canon. Bringing back Mace Windu just for the sake of it isn't really it. That's also what sets apart fan recreations, because it's already a story that's been made officially. It's just done better or done to look more realistic. I know this is heavily opinionated, but I prefer someone's original new story to do the ability to do whatever they want than basically some fans' interpretation of a character that's incredibly biased. Because of course, if you're a big fan of Boss, you're going to make him look way overpowered and incredible. Look, of course there's exceptions to this rule. There are great fan films that use Star Wars characters like this Kylo Ren one in the forest. And there's bad recreations. And of course this is opinionated. What I think is good, you might think is bad, and vice versa. I just want to preach that if you have an idea or a dream to do something, just know what you're doing so you do not end up making a mistake and wasting thousands of dollars. Anyways, that is my video on why fan films are bad. I know this will, like I said at the beginning, ruffle some feathers. I do not want to offend anyone with their fan films. I'm just giving my opinion on why some fan films and recreations are bad, and what makes them bad, and what makes some of them good. That is really it. If you like this type of content, this little documentary kind of content, then like it, I guess. Also, subscribe if you want to. Or if you want me to just go back to doing lore all the time, then scream it in the comment section down below what you think about this video, and should I go back to lore.